Welcome to this Sunday edition of Weather to Watch. A lot of active weather is going to be in the works over at least the next week, probably the next week and a half. And this will take the form of heavy rain and severe weather episodes across mostly the central and then eventually the eastern U.S. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Let's dive in. Well, as is customary, when I do this video, I show you just the overview here. This is the visible satellite loop for the lower 48. For this afternoon, on this Sunday afternoon, we have a weather system here, probably the most predominant feature right now. It'll pale by comparison to what's coming up here. We do have a frontal boundary in here. I'll show you the map in a minute. And it looks like there's some antics offshore coming ashore in California. And you'd be right, in the upper atmosphere, there is a low pressure area and a little mini sort of atmospheric river kind of setting up there in California. This will mostly may be snow for the mountains once again and rain in the lower elevations. We have just a little ripple in the atmosphere here. That's what's causing this little disturbance to ride along the edge of the Arctic air and the warm air. And it's cool in the northeast, and here's why. Here's the surface map, and we have a big old Arctic high sitting over the Great Lakes, perfectly placed, as a matter of fact. So this is the cold flow around that high here. Meanwhile, the front is quasi-stationary. That's when the blue and the red are on opposite sides of the line down in here. So that's really probably not going to move any more down to the south. So what's happening here is energy, heat, moisture is being allowed to build up here. So this high will never send this front down to the Gulf. In fact, the overall flow suggests that we will be in a fetch of more moist air, and that will have a real sensible effect on what I'm forecasting for weather here for this week and also into the early part of next week too. Let's take a look at those temperatures. They range from lonely 8 degrees up there in the upper right-hand corner, Caribou. New York City is only about 41 degrees. Meanwhile, Atlanta 75, just a tad warmer in Miami. It is in Shreveport, Louisiana, 81 degrees. A little cool in the northern plains, Minneapolis 29 degrees, and in the west, moderate, with mostly temperature in the 50s from Oregon and Washington, and then 60s and 70s through most of California. I'll show you that wet weather system moving through Missouri here. Pretty good rains there in central Missouri. Nothing severe. A little bit of clap of thunder in that, possibly. I did notice one severe thunderstorm warning that was issued there north of Tulsa, kind of a lone wolf. But this weather system will quickly exit the area. Now let's take a look at the overall pattern change and then start to build a picture for what's going to happen over, let's say, about the next 10 days or so. If you've watched this video before, you know I like to show this. It's the EPS Weekly. So this is actually issued twice a week. The last one was Thursday night, so the new one will be tomorrow night. But this is still very valid and is kind of a teaching moment here. So this is the anomalies for the 500 millibar flow. So what you're basically seeing on average over the next week starting tomorrow is a trough of low pressure in the western U.S. And what you're seeing in the eastern U.S. is a ridge, kind of a flat ridge, but very anomalous for this time period. So in other words, when you see these colors here, that means that the heights or these lines here are higher by quite a bit than you would normally see in the Northeast. So usually that translates to a sensible weather pattern that's warm, and you'd be right here. So all this is above normal. And again, this isn't storm specific. This is a weekly, so it's the average of 7 days beginning tomorrow. But first of all, the entire country is above normal. The only neutral stuff is in Maine and maybe coastal areas of New England. That's it. And then the hot spot there is in Tennessee, back down to Texas, Ohio, Tennessee river valleys. Let's expand this even further. Let's look at the dew point anomalies. So dew points are sort of an absolute measure of moisture in the air, and these are running very, very high for this time of year from Texas all the way up to West Virginia and Ohio. So that really equates to the possibility for heavy rain. It also suggests, and it'd be right, that the overall flow, again, is taking moisture from the Gulf, which is a primary source of moisture in the central and eastern maybe not quite the way eastern U.S. They have Atlantic helping them too, but certainly the plains and a lot of times the Ohio and Tennessee River valleys are aided by this flow off the Gulf. And if you look at the precipitation anomalies through that period that week, and I'll have plenty of maps to back this up, but you can kind of see where the heavier rains are forecast. Now let's take a look at, we're going to still look at the EPS. Now these are just the mean flows for each day. So 500 millibars on Friday. So just check the boxes. Trough out to the west on Friday of the central and eastern U.S. So check that box. We go to Sunday. Looks like a little cutoff system. Rain will still be occurring on the back end of this jet stream pattern. This disturbance and this disturbance will combine together and deepen a trough by Tuesday, once again over the Rocky Mountains, which implies warm and humid conditions way out here, and that's what's going to help to fuel several things. Let's take a look at the severe weather first, and then we'll take a look at the heavy rain. Well, late in the afternoon, they update the Day 3 severe weather outlook. That's Tuesday, and they did pull the trigger on the lowest of the 5 possibilities through mostly southeast Kansas for Tuesday. So that's a level 1 out of 5. So that just kind of a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms of any type. Kansas City not really included in that, but close. Wichita certainly is. And so that is something they pulled the trigger on. It was kind of curious because when I looked at this map this morning from CSU, it did actually show a little bit of a threat, hail especially in that area I just showed you, even a small tornado risk in eastern Kansas. And when I looked at that, I was wondering if the SPC would update their forecast based on this and maybe a lot of other things too, of course. And they sure did. So this is going to be north of a frontal boundary, I think, but if enough moisture gets up there, that's where the tornado threat could actually materialize in eastern Kansas if we get favorable low-level winds. A little too early to know that for sure. I do want to skip now to Wednesday, though. And if you look at Wednesday's severe weather outlook, it's a 15% chance of any type of severe weather within 25 miles within this circle. This has crept northward. I live in the Ozarks here, in Springfield in particular, so this is kind of getting into northwest Arkansas. I'm going to keep an eye on it. That's the threat for Wednesday. If we look at CSU's model, there is the severe weather risk on the right that I just showed you, and here's where they're thinking. The learning machine, just looking at previous examples, trying to figure out what's going on. They actually put the epicenter more in Arkansas, which is on the edge of this outlook area. And again, all guidance is valuable. So this isn't the end-all be-all where severe storms might be expected Wednesday, but it's probably pretty close. And I think SPC's outlook is pretty accurate. Then we skip a day. And this is new for Friday, and for folks, again, living in the Ozarks, southwest Missouri, that we're in this now. But this is a 15% chance running from northern Missouri straight down to Dallas. So Oklahoma City, Dallas, Fort Smith, Joplin, Springfield, Columbia, Kansas City, all in that risk. Again, that's for Friday. And again, to look at the machine learning model, it's interesting because it puts that right there, SPC, but they have it sunk way to the south. But again, this is only as good as the models it read as of this morning. So the SPC probably looked at something else and decided to lay down something closer to this. So again, when I see discrepancies, it's kind of interesting to me, because I'm not quite sure how to explain them sometimes, except you might be looking at different model run times. But just, the southern end of this certainly is in this part. But the northern part of the SPC outlook is underrepresented here. So we'll see how this pans out. Now let's take a look at some rain maps. So you can divide this. This is what would be the 3 to 7 day period. You can divide this into 2 parts. Wednesday, the heaviest rains expected here. And then the period Friday through Sunday is the larger area here. So it's just 2 separate outlooks combined on top of each other. And here over the next 6 days, the Weather Prediction Center is putting this arc of rain from Texas to Missouri and curving back into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and even as far east as Pennsylvania. That's over the next 6 days. If we zoom in on that, again, this is accumulation over almost a week. The areas of yellow are 4 inches of rain, so northwest Arkansas, parts of southeast and eastern Oklahoma, maybe upstate Missouri a little bit. But the red is 2 inches, so a lot of folks getting about 2 to 4 inches of rain total over that entire period. How does that break down period by period? Well, through Wednesday, central Missouri is at the core, spreading off into Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And then when we go to Thursday through Friday, that's where that area I showed you down in Oklahoma, it starts to rear up a little heavy rain there. But again, notice the trend, a lot of repeat rain over areas. That is a possible flooding concern, sort of in an area like that. We'll focus on that in a couple of days when it becomes a little more defined. And then Saturday and Sunday, this coming weekend, new weekend here, once again, we're shifting to central Missouri and that same corridor. So, yeah, it's going to be wet. And it doesn't stop there. I did want to show you Saturday through Wednesday, there's a high probability of above normal precipitation in this area. And I'll come back to that when I do my 2 weeks out graphic and show you what I mean by that. If you're wondering if there's any snow, yeah, there actually is a little bit on the edge of that Arctic high. Let's take a look at it. So this is the snow forecast. There's a little bit of accumulating snow possible north of St. Louis, south of Hannibal, over into Indiana, over into the Cincinnati area, in the mountains of West Virginia there, and then also in New England. And the only advisory that I saw, and you can probably go ahead and connect the dots here, I just don't think I caught all the Weather Service updates here when I recorded this, but this is a winter weather advisory running just about exactly where I just showed you that possible snow accumulation. As you might expect, with a trough of low pressure developing in the west, the central and eastern U.S. will warm up. Let's look at some temperature patterns. So for tomorrow, Monday, we're still seeing that Arctic high leave, so the coldest air will be in Maine and New England and parts of the Carolinas and the Virginias, a little left over here, that snow band being laid down there, but that's just interrupting what is a building pattern of warmth here. To remind you, the colors are not temperatures, they're departures from normal, a little more valuable. So how much above normal are these high temperatures? But you can look at each city and try to figure out which one. So Dallas, for example, has a high of 80 on Monday. Now we go to Wednesday, and again, the entire country is very, very toasty. Some of these readings up here in Oklahoma, in the Dakotas, are in the 70s and 60s. Very, very abnormal for them. You can see the warmth spreading all over the eastern and central U.S. And by Friday, again, we have a trough of low pressure out here. That's just going to encourage ridging here and warmer temperatures in the central and eastern U.S. Now, if we go to, this is Friday, if we go to the period right after that, Saturday through Wednesday, there is evidence that that hot bubble, if you will, starts to shift east a little with the highest confidence of warm weather through that period way out east and starting to look a little bit more normal in the central plains. Now, let's take a look at that 2-week forecast and piece together a few more things. So here is the 2-week heavy rain forecast. So this goes from the 9th upper right-hand corner here through the 15th. And so we're not done with the heavier rains yet, so we're still setting up bands here. This is all in addition to what I've already showed you. So you can tell, you can see here, we might have some spring flooding issues somewhere in here. You know, it's kind of hard to define. But if this is just me just eyeballing all those maps I just showed you and overlaying them in my mind and seeing where the maximum accumulations of rain will be. Now, on the severe weather side, the last one I'll show you here for that 2-week period, for the 8th through the 14th, this does appear with the latest runs to sink quite a bit to the south. And there might be room for this to move north a little bit more through that period. We'll see. But certainly South Texas, much of Texas, coastal Texas, will have a little bit of a supercell composite, a higher percentage from about the 8th through the middle of the month. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.